and welcome back to Shannon Makes, where we have another paper piecing video. Now this is the third video I've done on the technique, and all of them have been using fabric sent to me by you, the viewer. So if you haven't seen the first two videos, particularly my last one, I do recommend to go watch them because this one will basically pick up right where that last one left off, with me in Norway stitching away at your fabrics and chatting about the process while answering some of the many questions that you had about English paper piecing. So let's just jump right in. I also had an entire segment of the comments that were dedicated to the topic of glue sticks instead of basting with thread. Every variation. Did you know that you can do this with glue sticks? Why are you using thread when glue sticks exist? You should really try using glue sticks. You'll love it. Every conceivable variation on the topic found its way into my comments, and I am aware that they make glue sticks that one can use instead of basting the thread, and it was an active choice on my part not to use them because I had just a very visceral negative reaction at the thought of using a glue stick. Gluing feels messy and sticky, and I mean, I'm sure it's not actually, but it also feels like one more thing I have to carry around with me. I was very actively not interested, but that is also very much just me. I know that there are people out there that swear by their glue sticks, that would potentially not even do this craft if they couldn't have their glue sticks, and that's fine because we all craft very differently. I do know a lot of people love the glue sticks because they speed up the process. Using the glue stick is inevitably faster than basting by hand, which is what I'm sitting here doing. But for me, I craft because I love the process. I love sewing. It's really relaxing to me. It's not about the destination. It really is about the journey. So I'm not in a rush to blow through any one stage of it. I will say that I suspect that it also makes this craft a lot more accessible to people who have poorer eyesight or not quite as good fine motor skills. So if we can make a craft more accessible to a larger population of people, that is fantastic. I do not think it actually changes anything about the process other than the basting step. You know, instead of basting, you're just going to be gluing them on. It's going to go a little bit faster, but then you're going to have to deal with taking the paper out when it has glue on it. Can you reuse the paper when it has glue on it? Maybe. I have actually no idea. And I personally am not interested in finding out firsthand, but if you are a staunch glue stick user, feel free to let us know in the comments below if you can reuse the paper afterwards. Is it any different for you than doing the basting? Why do you like it? We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. It's just not for me. Now, if you remember in the first half of this video, the one I put out back in December, I asked for some of your images of paper piecing projects that you are working on, and I got so many wonderful submissions. So this is Carla, and she does her paper piecing with upcycled neckties, which I thought was super cool. And her lovely work is going to be the backdrop to the first viewer tip, which is that you don't have to make full-blown quilts with this technique. You can make smaller, more manageable projects. Some suggestions were aprons, bowls, mug rugs, placemats, bags, or even just small flowers that you can then applique onto decorative pillows. So don't be intimidated thinking that you need to make a giant project with this. You can use the same technique and make much smaller, more manageable projects if that's more your jam. Hello friends, I am just interrupting my own sewing video to let you know that I also have a house video that came out today. So depending on which order you're watching them in, this might be the first video you're watching on this Friday. And I know sometimes the YouTube algorithm and the notification system is a bit weird. So you might only have gotten notification for one video, but I do also have a house renovation video out, and it will pop up here on screen at the end of the video. So you can just click right on over and watch both of them. Two Shannon Makes videos in 1 week. Honestly, should be a pretty good Friday. All right, back to the sewing. People were also very curious about whether I was sewing through the paper as I was doing this whole process? And the answer is ideally no. Ideally, I'm not sewing through the paper at all. However, because I am human, we definitely make some errors, and you can see there are some little kind of pock marks here where my needle has just hit the paper a little bit, snagged it. I have a couple that are even worse than this, mostly around the corners. And I will say that is another reason that I am really enjoying these heavier weight templates over the thinner, more flimsy heart ones. Now this is a brand new one, so it looks like it's in great shape, but I will say that these are more easily destroyed. They're a little bit more flimsy, and these are holding up a little bit better. These have seen many, many uses, and I believe I can continue to use them many, many more times. So slight preference for the heavier ones, again, for that reason, but in a perfect world, I am not actually sewing at all through the paper. However, I think we can accept that we will all mess up and make some mistakes at some point, and there will be a little bit of needle piercing paper action in this craft, and that's fine.
This next inspirational image is from Nora, who started paper piecing years ago and then rediscovered it just recently while traveling to Taiwan, Vietnam, and Australia. And her image is going to be the backdrop for the tips about what paper to use if you wanted to cut out your own templates. And some of your suggestions ranged from using junk mail to old file folders to the thin cardboard wrappers from your favorite meal delivery service. Which, yes, I can absolutely confirm they work fantastically. I've tried it out, and also, yes, I did officially just slide a sponsor into this crafting video, but Factor is not just any sponsor. Factor will give you more time to craft. And how do I know? Because I've been using them and paying for the service myself for several months now, and it has been a total game changer. It has been saving me so much time. Now in my case, that time is going towards renovating, but in your case, that could be time that you spend stitching or knitting, spinning. Insert whatever craft you prefer here. Their fresh, never frozen meals are not only a huge time saver, but they are delicious and incredibly healthy. They are chef crafted, dietitian approved, and they're ready to eat in just 2 minutes. They've got a ton of options for different meals like keto, vegan and vegetarian, or protein plus, and they rotate their menus around. So you do have a good variety of options to choose from every week. One of my personal favorites and a constant on my weekly list whenever I can snag it is their spicy peanut grilled chicken. It comes with this delicious satay sauce, quinoa, and roasted sweet potatoes, and every time I see it on the menu, you can bet I add at least 2 of them to my order. So if you'd like to spend less time cooking and more time crafting, head to factor75.com or click the link below and use my code 50makes to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That is code 50makes at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
I did get some questions about what type of thread I'm using when I'm doing this. Am I using a specific type of thread for this? The answer is honestly not. For me, I've been using up all these weird colors of thread that I purchased originally for a very specific project, and now I have an entire drawer full of highly specific threads in colors that I'm not going to use again. So for this one, I did try to grab some random green and pink, and I also grabbed a white as well, just to kind of generally match the theme of my project. But for the Hobbit one, I had a black, I had a dark blue, I had a maroon, just any kind of random dark color, and I have small enough stitches that I can't really see any of mine poking through, so I'm not too fussed about trying to match the color or anything, especially because if I tried to match every single color, I'd probably go stir crazy. I will say that a lot of people always are concerned that older threads or thrifted threads are going to snap. And I think that the basting part of this project is a perfect use case for those, because if they're strong enough that they don't snap while you're sewing with them, they're almost definitely going to be strong enough that they'll hold together at least until you stitch everything down properly. So for me, that's been an amazing use case for this. I will say that I did get some recommendations from people for specific hand sewing thread. So if you're somebody who has a love-hate relationship with hand sewing, maybe you could try those threads because they won't be tangling as much. I'll put the recommended brand up on screen here. Also, you could try waxing your thread if you want. For me, it's way too much of a hassle. I really don't mind. I'm super used to working with just the generic medium quality, not meant for hand sewing type thread, but that's just me. If it's a question of accessibility or, you know, not going stir crazy, would recommend possibly trying a fancier thread and seeing if that makes the process more enjoyable for you.
Now, this quilt is something that Kiara Una has been working on for over 10 years now. It is mostly from offcuts and fat quarters, and she said that some of the fabrics even glow in the dark, which I thought was pretty darn cool. And they are gonna serve as the backdrop for a question that I got a few times about what was the best shape to start off with as a beginner. And honestly, for this one, I'd say it really depends on you as a crafter, what you're looking for in the process, and how tenacious you are. So if you're looking to try something super easy, or if you're feeling a bit timid about the process, I would recommend to start off with the hexagons. But if you're a more adventurous crafter, or if you are looking for something that's a little bit more challenging or fiddly, then I would say it doesn't really matter what shape you start off with. The hexagons are nice because they're very homogeneous, and that makes them a bit mindless. You don't have to focus too much on what you're doing. All of the angles are the same. But if you really want to do something that's more complicated, you want to focus on something, you're looking for something a little more fiddly, then you could go with any shape you wanted. You could even mix and match a bunch of different shapes together to make a more complicated piece. So it's really all about you and how you personally craft.
You can also use whatever stitch that you want to hold these together. I have been using the whip stitch. I've been loving it. It's working really well. But one of my friends that I introduced this craft to in Montreal, she started off with the whip stitch, but then at some point she came back and was like, you know what I have discovered? The ladder stitch. And she was super excited about it, and I don't know if that's what she ended up sticking with for the entirety of her project, but she was super thrilled to have discovered that technique. Whereas I, on the other hand, if you had told me I had to do this whole project with ladder stitch, I would have flipped the table and walked away on the spot, because I do not enjoy using ladder stitch. I will not use it for anything longer than a short dart. So yeah, to each their own. Use the stitch that you enjoy, as long as it's holding your pieces together and they're not falling apart. That's all that matters. I also got a ton of questions about the paper of the English paper piecing, like asking, did I leave the paper in there forever? Do you take it out? If you take it out, when do you remove it? And I did admittedly show some shots in the first video of me taking out the paper, but it was also at the very end of the video, so you would have had to watch the whole thing to see it. So yes, as you can see here, you do take the paper out. Or at least you can. Historically, it was not always done, but nowadays it is pretty much, you always do tend to take the paper out. And as you can see, I'm taking it out as soon as each shape is completely enclosed. So for me, like as soon as the hexagon gets sewn down on all 6 sides, I tear that piece of paper out of there. Although, interestingly enough, I did get some people warning me that taking the paper out before the entire project was finished would stress and strain my seams, and that the whole thing would just deform and become really wonky, which I mean, at this point, I've literally sewn hundreds of shapes together, be it hexagons or jewels, and I have always taken the paper out as soon as I could because it's just so much nicer to work on. It's so much easier to transport. I can just roll it up or fold it up and jam it in my bag. And it also means you can use fewer templates because you can just keep reusing them. Once you pull it out, you can use it again, rather than if you don't pull it out, then you just need hundreds and hundreds of templates to complete one project. That doesn't seem particularly sustainable to me. Case in point, for funsies, I decided to sew on this entire top row here without removing the paper from the row below it. So instead of popping each of these templates out the second it was fully surrounded, I left them all in and can confirm it was not, in fact, funsies. I did not enjoy that process at all. So I personally will be going back to my old ways of just every time I close off a teardrop shape, I'm gonna pop the paper out. And you know, I've been doing the entire rest of the piece this way so far, and my previous piece the same way, and it's fine. Things are not shifting. They're not getting wonky. Now, I don't know if that's because I have a very small stitch, so there's a lot of stitches per inch. Everything is very securely held down, but there's no paper in the interior of this entire piece. And it's looking just fine. It's holding in there. Nothing's shifting around or getting goofy, so if you would like to leave the paper in, if that makes you feel better, if, you know, that just makes you happy and tickles your fancy or makes the sewing easier and more enjoyable, please do so. But for me, I am just here to be the advocate to tell you that if you want to take the paper out, should be fine.
I got so many lovely photos from everyone that I thought I should show some of them off here, especially the ones that are more works in progress or smaller projects, because I really want to reiterate that you don't have to make giant, massive quilts. They can be big projects, but they can also be small projects. You can have them perfectly coordinated, or they can be scrappy. They can take years, or they can take hours. It is all up to you. So for me, I'm continuing to work on mine. It is slowly growing in size, and when it's done, I will be sure to show you what I make with it, because I think it is going to be just grand. Well, I really hope that you enjoyed that. I hope you had fun, learned something new about the technique, and maybe picked up some tips and tricks along the way, either from me or from fellow viewers. Let me know what your favorite part of the video was, what color schemes and shapes speak to you the most, and if you're now tempted to try this craft after watching all my videos on it. I mean, hey, new year, new craft, right? Although, honestly, as I told another viewer who mentioned she had a self-imposed restriction on starting new crafts, it's not really a new craft, it's just a fantastic way to bust your current stash, right? Oh, wind? Do we get wind? We're gonna get wind, aren't we? I hate it. What is even going on with this fabric? Oh, editing this down is gonna be a bear. Oh, am I gonna melt this or am I gonna flatten it? What do we think? Does it melt or does it press? It presses! Wow!